Title: Why the Global Economy is So Chaotic, Disaggregating Credit in the Age of AI Speculation. Introduction: The Illusion of Order in a Chaotic System. The global economy projects an image of stability, measured, charted, and seemingly predictable through quarterly GDP prints, inflation targets, and bond yields. Yet beneath this orderly surface lies a system operating on feedback loops so intertwined that traditional models can no longer explain, let alone predict, its behavior. Richard Werner's disaggregated credit theory offers a useful lens for decoding this complexity. It divides the money supply into two distinct channels: credit for productive investment and credit for speculative activity. When these two forms of credit intertwine without balance, the monetary system begins to resemble a three-body problem: chaotic, sensitive to small changes, and impossible to stabilize through linear policy tools alone. The rise of speculative finance, coupled with structural shifts in global trade, consumer debt, and artificial intelligence investment, has transformed what once resembled a steady engine of production into a volatile web of self-referential flows. The illusion of order persists only because the feedback loops have not yet broken. Section 2. From gold-backed simplicity to debt-driven complexity. In the pre-modern monetary era, the relationship between money and output could be modeled as a relatively stable two-body system: a base of real collateral, often gold, and the velocity with which it circulated through the economy. This created a predictable equilibrium: money supply growth tracked roughly with productive output, constrained by the physical scarcity of gold and the social trust underpinning its use. The introduction of synthetic credit changed this equilibrium. Banks, acting as intermediaries, began issuing debt not fully backed by tangible collateral. The expansion of credit effectively decoupled money creation from productive activity, inserting a third dynamic force into the economic system. This intermediation layer, commercial banks, central banks, and financial institutions, became both a stabilizer and a source of instability. It lubricated economic expansion, but also amplified fragility. When credit flows in the right direction, economies appear to grow effortlessly. When they reverse, contraction can cascade through every asset class simultaneously. Section 3. Disaggregating the money supply. Werner's framework. Werner's disaggregated credit theory reframes the traditional quantity equation, which states that money times velocity equals price times quantity, by breaking the money supply into its constituent credit types. In words, the equation becomes productive credit plus speculative credit multiplied by velocity equals price times quantity. Here, productive credit represents credit extended for real investment, factories, infrastructure, and innovation that increase productive capacity. Speculative credit represents credit used for asset purchases, margin lending, and stock buybacks that inflate prices without adding new output. When speculative credit dominates, nominal GDP can remain stable or even rise, while the underlying productive economy stagnates. The economy appears healthy because asset valuations and financial flows expand, but in reality, wealth becomes concentrated and fragile. This is where the global system now finds itself. A growing share of credit fuels speculative cycles rather than productive growth. The result is what appears to be prosperity without progress. Section 4. GDP constructed, the weakening pillars of growth. GDP, the central metric of modern economies, is composed of four parts: consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Viewed through Werner's lens, each of these components reflects either productive or speculative credit allocation. Consumption has weakened in the United States as households face rising debt burdens, declining real wages, and unaffordable housing. Student loan repayments and record credit card delinquencies indicate that consumers are not expanding real demand. They are merely extending credit-based survival. Investment has become increasingly distorted. The majority of capital flowing into high-growth sectors, particularly AI and technology, is speculative in nature, directed toward equity valuations rather than tangible innovation. Government spending has expanded to compensate for falling private demand. Yet deficit finance spending primarily fuels nominal GDP, not productive reinvestment. It is, in essence, fiscal velocity used to mask structural stagnation. Net exports have turned negative as tariff rollbacks and global trade realignments widen the U.S. deficit. The reversion to import dependency erodes what remains of the productive base. Together, these trends reveal a pattern of substitution. As one pillar weakens, another, usually debt-funded, temporarily props up the system. But every substitution introduces new fragility as the underlying productive engine continues to stall. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 5, the AI speculation loop, credit without creation. The technology sector, once a driver of genuine productivity, now functions as a closed-loop credit ecosystem. Companies such as NVIDIA, Microsoft, Meta, OpenAI, CoreWeave, Oracle, and xAI have become participants in a circular investment pattern where capital recycles among a small group of entities rather than flowing into broad economic innovation. Firms purchase each other's outputs, chips, compute, software licenses, using capital raised from inflated valuations or debt issuance. The same liquidity passes through the system multiple times, creating the illusion of high growth and demand. This is speculative velocity, not productive output. The problem is not that AI lacks potential, but that its financial infrastructure has become self-referential. Real economic returns remain limited, with few consumer-facing applications generating substantial revenue. OpenAI's estimated annual income of roughly $12 billion pales in comparison to the trillions in market capitalization and hundreds of billions in capital expenditures built on its narrative. As long as credit continues to circulate within this loop, GDP and market indices can appear stable. But once the flow slows, through competition, cost compression, or loss of confidence, the entire structure risks deflation. Section 6, China's distillation advantage and the coming deflation shock. China's position in this dynamic is strategically patient. Through machine learning distillation, Chinese researchers can replicate, simplify, and open source the capabilities of Western AI models at a fraction of the cost. This process effectively commoditizes what the U.S. has financed through speculative credit. If and when these distilled models reach parity, U.S. AI infrastructure spending will face an existential threat: cost compression without offsetting productivity gains. The result would be deflationary pressure across the AI sector, collapsing valuations and eroding the speculative credit base that underpins U.S. equity markets. Because AI stocks now represent a disproportionate share of market capitalization, such a shock could cascade through wealth effects, consumer confidence, and GDP, triggering a reflexive downward spiral, a mirror image of the 2023 to 2025 boom cycle. Section 7, inflation as the price of debt. In this framework, inflation ceases to be a mysterious byproduct of monetary expansion and becomes the price tag of systemic debt. Each new layer of credit imposes a delayed cost on purchasing power. The more the system relies on debt finance spending and speculative liquidity, the more inflation functions as an embedded interest rate on the entire economy. Traditional metrics like the Consumer Price Index capture only the surface layer of inflation. Beneath it lies monetary debasement, the silent erosion of value through credit expansion without productivity. Investors who focus only on CPI are competing against the wrong benchmark. The true hurdle rate is the sum of both visible and invisible dilution. Section 8, toward decentralized equilibrium, restoring a two-body model. If the instability arises from excessive intermediation and speculative credit, then stability may require returning to a two-body monetary model, where every unit of credit is transparently collateralized by a known, finite asset base. A hybrid system combining Bitcoin and tokenized gold could approximate this model. Such a framework would enforce collateral discipline, limit synthetic credit creation, and reestablish measurable velocity. In effect, it would operate as a decentralized form of narrow banking, transparent, predictable, and self-correcting. This approach does not abolish credit, it re-anchors it. By minimizing the role of intermediaries, it restores direct accountability between savers, borrowers, and productive activity. Section 9. Conclusion: the edge of monetary entropy. The global economy's apparent prosperity rests on unstable foundations: speculative credit, fiscal substitution, and a velocity of money maintained through artificial means. What was once a two-body system, money and goods, has become a three-body tangle of credit, confidence, and collateral. Disaggregated credit theory helps expose the anatomy of this instability. It shows that chaos in the global financial system is not random but structural, a consequence of too much speculative credit chasing too little real production. As AI speculation reaches its limits and fiscal capacity wanes, the world edges closer to a necessary rebalancing. Whether through crisis or innovation, equilibrium will return when money once again reflects tangible value rather than circular promises. True stability begins when credit creation is once again tied to creation itself.